People ask me sometimes why a marriage therapist is talking about diversity training. And honestly, the answer is simpler than most people expect. It's because I watched the same pattern of breakdown, the one I spent years learning to fix in relationships, playing out in organizations, in training rooms, and the cultural conversations that were supposed to bring people together and were instead driving them apart. And I realized, I know what this is. I know what to do with this. I became a licensed marriage and family therapist because I was fascinated by conflict. Not conflict in the dramatic sense, but in the ordinary, quiet kind. The kind where two people who genuinely want the same thing are somehow unable to move toward it together. Where communication breaks down not out of malice, but out of fear, assumption, and a slow erosion of trust. In over 20 years of clinical practice, I sat with couples across backgrounds, beliefs, economic situations, and cultural contexts. And what I found consistently was that the same situations that created breakdown in a relationship also created the conditions for healing, safety, curiosity, repair, trust that mistakes don't have to end the conversation. When I started training organizations in cultural confidence, I kept waiting for the work to feel different. It never really did. The faces were different, the professional contexts were different, but the human dynamics underneath were remarkably similar. People who wanted to do better, but didn't feel safe enough to admit what they didn't know. People who were performing engagement while privately disengaging. People who had given up, not because they didn't care, but because nobody had ever given them a pathway that felt possible. That's the same couple I'd seen in my office 100 times, and the same tools worked. The turning point in my approach, the thing that changed how I ran every training after, came from a question a participant asked early in my career as a trainer. He raised his hand and asked, "Why does every conversation about diversity make me feel like I have to defend myself from something being taken away from me?" I've been sitting with that question for years because he wasn't alone, and he wasn't wrong to ask it. The prevailing model in diversity training is built upon a premise that most people feel but can't name, that cultural growth requires sacrifice, that for one group to gain, another must give up something. And I understand why this framework exists. The inequities it's responding to are real. But here's what I know from 20 years of working with people in conflict: a framework that makes one party feel like the defendant will never produce real growth. It produces compliance, resentment, and the slow, quiet exit of exactly the people who most need to stay in the conversation. The framework that changed my work and that sits at the center of everything I teach is this: cultural confidence is not about sacrifice, it's about expansion. When you genuinely develop the capacity to connect, to communicate, to serve across cultural difference, you become a more effective professional, a more capable leader, a better human being. Nobody loses, everybody gains. That's not idealism. That's what I've watched happen in rooms across this country consistently for 20 years. I want to be direct about something. The cultural conversations in our workplaces, our institutions, and our communities are not going away. If anything, they're intensifying. And the professionals who will navigate those conversations with real skill, who will build real trust across real difference, are the ones who understand that this is fundamentally a relational challenge, not just an informational one. That means building the conditions for safety, practicing curiosity as a professional skill, learning to repair, not just apologize. That's the work I've spent 2 decades learning in therapy rooms. And that's the work I'm committed to bringing into every organizational context I can reach. Not for some people, for everyone. If you're a professional who's been waiting for a different kind of conversation about culture, this channel is for you. Subscribe. I'm going to keep showing up with the tools that actually work. And if you're ready to bring this work into your organization, the link below is where you should start. Let's do this right.